And how many times in life, if there's something we don't want, just replace it with something you do. And now all of the things that you don't want anymore don't have space to grow. Mm-hmm. And when it does crop up, you just deal with it. And it's super easy and quick instead of being a constant battle.
Welcome to Living God's Light, a podcast to help you strengthen your spirituality and your connection with God. We are so happy to have you as a part of the Living God's Light family.
Welcome to the Living God's Light podcast. I'm here with
Tolman.
Lindsay Young.
I'm Alan Smith.
Lynn Taylor.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about the power of creation. Lynn says this is his favorite.
It is. This is my favorite principle. I love this one.
Tell us why. Fill us in.
I love creating things. I love creating stories. I love creating relationships, even though I'm like a hardcore introvert. But having like deep relationships with people is fulfilling to me. Creation it just brings me joy. And exploring this principle and realizing that everything we do builds something. It's either something we want or something we don't want. And one of the biggest, I'm just going to jump right to it, one of the biggest revelations to me was the idea that we get more of what we focus on. And this is one of the things that people often don't realize is if you want to get rid of sickness, you don't focus on the sickness, you focus on health.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to eliminate prejudice, you don't focus on the prejudice, you focus on brotherhood. If you want to get rid of hate, you focus on love. So whatever you want, focus on that, and that'll just naturally replace what it is you want to get rid of. So
does that mean all these anti-campaigns of anything don't work? Yeah.
They backfire.
Why. They do. They all backfire.
And it's
anti-anything.
Yeah.
Backfires.
Yeah. So because what you're doing is you're feeding energy, you're giving the focus to, you're giving the energy to that thing that you're trying to fight against. So the war on anything, focus on what you want to replace with. And I'll hand it over, but I got an example that I'm going to share a little bit later about that. The principle in action in my own life. But
it just makes me think of has anyone ever tried to lose weight and you focus on what you can't do more than what you should be doing? And it's a totally different mindset. Maybe today I'm going to go out and go for a walk or, get some exercise, go for a hike. Sounds uplifting, even just saying that, more than I can't eat Cheetos anymore. I can't eat chips, all the things I love, my Hostess cupcakes, and it's just the whole energy of the statement of you focus on what you want to fill that portion with more than what you want to take out.
Like we talked about last time, you can't just leave a vacuum. It's going to get filled.
Yeah. And
you proactively decide what you're going to put in there and what you're going to fill it with.
Yeah. If you're not intentional with what you want to fill it with, it'll fill itself with things you might not want.
Yeah.
I look at life as an energy bank, and what energy we put in, we draw out. If we put anti-energy in, we get anti-energy out. So we get, negative in, negative out, positive in, positive out. Super simple, but it goes a long way. And our thoughts are our magic wands. I say that a lot because, a magic wand gives you the empowerment to create or destroy. And that's what our thoughts do. We can create with our thoughts or we can destroy with our thoughts. And someone might come up to me and say, I didn't destroy my life by thinking negatively. And I can track in their life when the negative thoughts started and how long it took. But eventually the outcome was attracted because of all the negative deposits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just curious, and Vinny, maybe you can shed some light on this, but just what is the expansiveness of the power of creation? When we're telling people about the power of creation, what can we create? What is possible?
So this is what's funny. from my experience of being on the other side, the universe is unlimited on what we can create. So we're put into the sandbox of Earth School. And that's what this is. We're in the sandbox. So there's not as much that we can create here, but of the paradigm here, we can create anything. We can. But what we can really create in the eternities, in our real life, our real existence, is astounding. Like so far beyond what our brain can comprehend. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
But it starts here in the sandbox.
Yeah. So maybe we could focus on some things that we want to create. What what is it in your life that you want to create, or in your space? I mean, I know that, like Lynn, I love to write. I love the experience of creating characters and creating something that will help somebody learn or experience the joy or the sadness or the, all of those things. So I love the writing process. I love to paint too. And how it happens in layers. You don't just go up to the board. We're not all Bob Ross, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But when I've painted, I start in layers. I start with a base. I start with a foundation. And then I add a piece, and I add a piece. And sometimes I make a mistake, and I have to go back and I have to clean it up, or I have to figure out how to fix that. But it happens in layers. And I think that as we create in our lives, we do the same thing. We have to create in layers. So what are some of the things that you guys would like to create in your own lives?
I love that you brought up Bob Ross. In painting, I've got a cousin that is a pretty famous painter, and he can tell you the exact emotion that went into his painting. But here's what's really neat. You can go stare at his painting, not hearing his story, and you can write down those same emotions. You feel it coming off of that. Cool. And, watching Bob Ross go and make happy little clouds, it makes you laugh, but then you go look at it and you're like, those are happy little clouds.
Yeah.
Like he really is able to put that energy into the work of the painting, right? And we're all that way. We can put that power of intention into everything we do. We can put the power of intention in how we greet each other, how we treat each other on the road, how we work with each other. It's really amazing that we have that power, all of us.
Yeah. And even like when he's painting and he's like, oh, just a little mistake here, but we don't call that a mistake. We're going to turn it into a bird. And it's just like, it just becomes something else. And his whole vibe, really, I think that's why people are so attracted to him, is because it's like, there's not really like a daunting, like, oh, you don't match up to my painting. It's like, come, everyone. Like, this is my painting. Everyone's invited.
And I think that's a good insight for life, because everything we do, like, we create every day. We create what our day is going to be. And sometimes things come to us, things outside of our control happen to us or come across our path. But how we respond to that, if you like take that Bob Ross way of, there's no accidents. We're just going to, we're going to turn this fender bender into a chance to meet somebody new and do so. And you don't necessarily have to be overjoyed about every little thing, but the way that you receive it and interpret that shapes the creation that comes out of that experience.
Completely. And I feel like, following these principles and trying to incorporate them into your life, really it's knowing that everything has purpose. There's a meaning, there's a reason for everything. I'm of the belief that everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. So if everything's a miracle, then that fender bender turned into a connection that turned into an opportunity that turned into joy of some kind. So very cool.
It makes me wonder how many people created a relationship and met their spouse or their partner because of an auto accident.
You never know.
Do we want to put that in the universe, Ellen? Just wondering. Just kidding.
Well, no, it wasn't me putting the energy out there. It was just a curiosity.
All these people out there listening, wow, that's how we met. No,
so one thing, the story that I mentioned earlier that I was going to share is when, so the house that I live in now, when we moved in, there was not a yard in there. There wasn't sprinklers, it wasn't grass, it was really just weeds. And we were planning on putting in a yard, but the house had some other things we had to fix, and so all the money went to that. And it took us a while to get grass put in. And so for the longest time, we were fighting weeds. I mean, we had thistles that were as tall as me, and which isn't saying much, but it was a constant struggle. We were fighting weeds. But as soon as we put the grass in, so we're fighting the things that we didn't want. All the energy was going to getting rid of what we didn't want. But when we finally put in what we did want and the grass was there, weeds are no longer a problem. Mm-hmm. There was no room for the weeds because it was full of grass. Now, sometimes we'll get little here and there, but they're super easy to deal with because the grass fills that space. And how many times in life, if there's something we don't want, just replace it with something you do. And now all of the things that you don't want anymore don't have space to grow. Mm-hmm. And when it does crop up, you just deal with it. And it's super easy and quick instead of being a constant battle. And seeing that happen, I see so many places in my life that if there's something I don't want, what do I replace it with? Is that there because I'm not putting my creative energy into building something better?
I love that. Mm-hmm. To choke out the weeds, nourish the grass. So nourish what you want to get rid of what you don't want.
Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's, like we talked about last time, the technology that you use, you create your life. You create what you want out of life. And like a lot of the limits are ones that are self-imposed. And there's a reason life is challenging. That's by design, but you can create how you deal with those challenges.
Mm-hmm. Because we're here to do what?
Make choices.
Make choices. We're here to learn.
And create.
And grow. So one of the things that I do in my life that has helped me with the power of creation is I have a list of the things that I want to accomplish or things that I want to have in my life. So about 10 years ago, I did a class with this guy named Richard Paul Evans that I think we all know. And it was all about creating what I wanted in my life. And it was around finance. Because he has this book called The 5 Lessons I Learned About Wealth, Life and Wealth from a Millionaire, something like that. I'm terrible.
5 lessons.
The 5 lessons. Yeah.
A millionaire taught me.
Yeah. And so...
Excellent book, by the way.
Sorry, Rick, I didn't mean to butcher that. And one of the things it said was, put it up on the board. Today I decide to be wealthy was the first principle. And I expanded that, and not just into finance, but into my life in general, is today I decide to be wealthy in this area. I want to create wealth in my relationships. I want to create wealth in my knowledge. And so that's what I did. I put that I wanted to do certain things, and it took me a long time to accomplish the list, and now I need a new list. So this really brought to that forefront the idea that if I create a list of the things that I want to create and just have it in front of me and have that as a positive space, that's going to be something that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of having that reminder there because it's so easy to get distracted and forget what it is you really want. And so having that list, and also, I know we talk a lot about what are you creating, what do you want to do, and having friends that you can collaborate with in that creative process really helps to feed that. It has a synergistic multiplying effect that can really help accelerate that growth.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
And I think that there's no creation too silly, too off base, I think for me personally, it's like, I really am good at this, but will this be accepted by the world and everybody else? I guess what I'm realizing is that if that is what you're drawn to and that is part of your creation process, that's the most important thing on your list. And to not compare it to everybody else creating whatever. It's just, again, my generation of looking on social media like, oh, they have this, they're doing this. It's so easy to just gauge yourself off of other people when really God wants you to gauge yourself off of you, your own soul.
And that reminds me of an example. So my youngest brother, the oldest of 8 kids, my youngest brother was involved in charity cosplay, costuming stuff. And I looked at that and I was like, that looks like fun, but it's a little too geeky. And it was really a too geeky for me. And it was a judgment that I had placed on it that I was like, oh, I don't know. But then I hit my 40s and I didn't care what people thought anymore. And so I was like, I'm gonna do this. So I created this costume based on very popular. It's Star Wars. My family is I grew up loving that. So there's some official Star Wars costuming groups that go and raise money for Make-A-Wish Foundation and other charities and that sort of thing. And so I was able to design and create and learn these new skills on making these things. And then I would go out to these groups and participate with these other people that are very passionate about, Star Wars, but also the charity. And oh my goodness, the kids make you feel like a rock star, and sometimes the adults do too. And it was so much fun. Like all these years, I could have been enjoying that aspect of things and that much fun, but the fear of judgment and my own judgment kept me from experiencing that. So I'm very glad that you mentioned that, because if it brings you joy, do it. There's a community out there that will love you for it and thrive. Just find that community or build it. Decide what you want to create. Don't be shy about it. Just be passionate about creation.
I love the idea of that, and just not being worried about the judgment, because I think so often we're worried about what others will think. The only people we need to compete with is ourselves.
It's true.
I just need to compete with myself and be better this time than I was last time. And that's my gauge of where I need to do with my creation. So I'm going to ask you guys, I like to give you assignments or ask you hard questions. So I'm going to ask you, what are you going to create this week? I know, hard question, right?
I'm going to hop in there and go back to my old days of playing rugby in high school and college. And when I was playing in high school, I had these two awesome coaches. They were twins, Mark and Dean Ormsby, and they saw two players in me. One player would show up and do pretty good, and then another one would dominate the entire game, everyone around him. And they didn't understand there was this point of switching one player into the other at almost every game. But if the game was really laid back and there wasn't a lot of altercations, then that aggressive player would never come out. And I love, and it wasn't about that, but they came and sat me down and they said, hey, what do we got to do to get the good player to show up at every match? And one of them joked around, do I need to hit you in the face? Because every time somebody hits you in the face, then the good rugby player comes out. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of is like that. But they asked me, who's your superhero in rugby? And back then it was a guy named John Olomu. He played for New Zealand on the All Blacks, and he would run so hard down the field he could have 7 people attached to him, and he would keep running as if they weren't even there, as if they were children. And he would just keep running, and he would score a touch with 7 people hanging on him. And he was a monster and a legend, and still to this day a legend. So they asked, okay, if John Olomu is your target of what you want to become as a rugby player, everything you do every day, ask yourself, is this something John Olomu would do? And man, that changed my mind about everything I was doing. I realized there was a lot of entertainment that I was doing, a lot of weekending, partying and stuff that I was doing that was not synchronizing with my goals. And it allowed me to completely change my play. And that's what allowed me to play in college and take that to the end of that road. But we all have the ability to allow our minds to fast forward into the future of success and ask ourselves, is this what our future successful version would do? And it helps make daily decisions a lot easier and a lot better. And for me, that's the challenge I'm going to give myself, is to allow myself to get in my John Olomu mentality, not necessarily for rugby, but allow myself to make the daily decisions that my future successful version would make. Yeah. So that's going to be my challenge for myself.
Okay.
That's cool. I love that. And like you said, it's just a challenge to be a better version of yourself every day. So I'm going to kind of mirror that. and just say, take a version of myself that I know that I love and adore. The person that I know that I am, capable, and just without judgment, and existing and being able to give to the world that day without judgment. That's my person that I love the most. It's not about, how much I'm producing, how much I'm doing. It's really like that person wanting to be that person each day, or just, checking in. Like, am I showing myself compassion today? Am I not judging myself today? Because that version of myself can create. That version of myself can, create good boundaries for my children, can create good creative ideas for the workplace, can do so much more. So really checking in with myself. Am I being my John Alamu? Yeah. But just my Lindsay version that I know, because that's going to allow me to create the best.
I love that. What about you, Lynn?
Oh, I thought you were going to go next. I'm still working on.
Okay. So for me, I love what Lindsay said. It doesn't have to be something that you're creating that's physical. It can be something that you're creating here, that you're creating here. And that kind of struck me a little bit differently. For me, I was thinking of a task. For me, I'm working on a keynote speech. So for me, my goal this week for a physical thing is to write that speech and be completely finished with it. But I love the idea of creating something here and here.
So I've got a lot of projects that I work on.
What?
We know this.
Yeah, so surprising.
Yeah, and this, I know podcasts are evergreen, but right now, as we're recording this time of year, I try to kind of pull back and hibernate, and it's just not really working so well this year. So what I need to do, what I'm going to create this year is not this year, but this week, is I'm going to get all of those things that right now are kind of a muddled mess in my brain. I'm going to get them on a list in front of me, and I'm going to basically get my workspace organized. But it's my mental workspace and my the tools that I use to keep all that stuff organized, because right now my workshop is kind of a mess. So I'm going to create an organized space so I can re-engage, be intentional, and still not burn myself out.
I think that's awesome. So the challenge for all of our listeners and watchers this week is for you to create something for yourself this week, whether it's an internal change, whether it's something that you want to create, clean up, create. Focus on the positive this week and the things that you are most interested in having in your life. And that's the power of creation. Thanks for joining us. We will look forward to seeing you again. Like and subscribe and follow us on all of those social media channels, and we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to paint some happy little clouds in your life.
Happy little accidents.
Thank you for joining us on the Living God's Light podcast. You can help keep the show going through getting merch at livinggodslight.com or contributing what you think the show is worth on our website or by going through Patreon. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. You are making a difference, and we love you.